Let's welcome everybody. Yeah, so we'll spend this next hour. Hi, Pete. It's just kind of an open discussion and see what is kind of percolating for people, and just kind of go from there. So really, any questions kind of is good. Just kind of an open opportunity to discuss and explore some kind of fundamental principles for Buddhist practice, Buddhist psychology. Talk about the kind of framework of the Buddhist path from this tradition's standpoint. About really anything. Yeah, Maya, you have a question?
Please unmute if you have a question.
Oh, okay. I just saw your hand, please. Yeah.
I got a question.
Sure, you, Sergio.
Hey, when you go through, I guess, mindfulness and meditations, and for myself, I kind of switch between anxiety and having no anxiety. Not during the meditation. I mean, like weeks go by, and I'm feeling great, and all of a sudden, something comes back. I mean, I could probably put my finger on it, but is that a normal process where you kind of, as you're cycling and trying to get you know yourself, getting to know your mind and what goes through it?
Yeah, good question. Generally, what I always hear from teachers and just all of us trotting along, it's not a linear, not necessarily linear kind of path. An idea of kind of a spiral, the kind of that analogy of layers of an onion, where there could be, we start to get to a place and then something new kind of emerges in a different way. Yeah. So the teachings and instructions can be very nicely kind of organized and coherent and linear, and the gradual, there's in this tradition the gradual stages of the path, and it's like this and then this and then this and then this, and it's presented in that way just as a kind of coherent kind of outline or map, but it's really kind of more, you kind of go in and out of the lived experience. Yeah, Lou?
I'm going to mention that one of the signs of successful meditation is that things start popping up that you didn't expect to pop up. And that sometimes you think you're getting worse. But the thing is, you're finally noticing what's in your mind. It's always been there. It's just you've never noticed it. And so that's a sign of success when things start popping up that you never realized were there.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and that's often a particular symptom of the beginning stages of meditation. In particular, it's like we're starting to slow down, and then by slowing down, we're starting to see the kind of actual speed of our mind and maybe our emotion.
But is this something, because I don't really see it in the meditation, it kind of comes afterward in life. Yeah. When I start seeing, what did I just do? Like, is this okay? Maybe I should change that or approach it differently.
And specifically with anxiety, it kind of comes and goes, you're saying?
I mean, if I'm looking at my life and looking at something I want to improve upon, and if I'm dealing with a person or a certain situation that I've probably done who knows how many times, but finally it comes to me that maybe I should approach it differently.
Mm.
That seems to be a result of the meditation, not so much,
Mhm.
you know, during the meditation.
Mm. Mhm. And when you say approaching it differently, you're saying that becomes kind of difficult, or that's like approaching is like a more of an insight,
Maybe it's an insight into maybe approaching the situation differently to um, maybe have a better effect on the person I'm with,
mm-hmm.
or whatever situation's going on, the interaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess it's in Buddhist circles. I guess you call it improved speech, or whatever you call the using your speech in a better way to
Mm-hmm.
improve the life for yourself and others.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the hope, is that the kind of deliberate taking time to study and contemplate, or taking time to kind of train in meditation or practice meditation. These are cultivation exercises that will hopefully kind of pop up in our life, and the more we kind of deliberately spend time doing those, hopefully the more accessible that those kind of qualities that we're starting to develop start to play out. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, one more question. Do these insights come to other people during their meditation as well?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it can be something to really stay with. And I've also heard some of my teachers say, if it's really compelling and you want to kind of come back to it, but you still, maybe it's not quite fitting in your meditation, or it's starting to kind of almost like ruminate, you can maybe write it down just to come, whatever needs to kind of jot out real quick, and then come back to your practice and kind of let it go, and knowing that you can come back to that kind of insight that maybe bubbled up in practice. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's that's kind of the thing. We're kind of starting to take a mirror to our mind and starting to see like how it functions, how it works, what are our interpersonal habits, and how can we start to apply, from the Buddhist point of view, kind of wholesome mental states of kindness, openness, sense of care, a sense of freshness. So like trying to break like the repetition of some of our lives and relationships, like assuming I know how this person is going to be today. And having that recognition of like, oh well, right now is a fresh moment, and how can I pause and kind of engage fresh and see how it goes, rather than sometimes we start one of the benefits of sitting practice can be seen when we're starting to kind of project and kind of map out what's going to happen, or how this person is, or how I am, or whatever, and like, oh, maybe I can drop my drop that story and just kind of come into it with an open mind. And It can be very valuable to start to break patterns.
Thank you.
And then, like Lou said, it's not always just kind of light bulbs and breakthroughs and insights. It can be, yeah, kind of our patterns can really kind of come up, and that can be an opportunity for growth, in a sense, maybe something that we always turn away from or kind of distract from. If we're able to start to develop our capacity to turn towards difficult aspects of ourselves with a sense of kindness and with that kind of fresh mind and kind of maybe even curiosity, like, oh, here's that again, oh, interest, instead of like, oh, this is my anger, my anxiety, I'm so sick of it, why am I still like, maybe you can catch it, pause, and have a genuine like curiosity to it, like open, like fresh, okay, maybe I don't really, kind of have an open mind. Can be very interesting. And maybe we experience it can be a totally different kind of experience than what we're used to. And sometimes that curiosity itself is kind of the linchpin of where our suffering is starting. Because if there is a difficult emotion, we create an extra layer of difficulty with judging it, or being averse to it, or being frustrated by it, or yeah. And if we pull that reaction out of the situation then it's just what it is. And then it's like, it can be painful, but there's like space that starts to create, because the frustration and the judgment and so forth starts to become kind of claustrophobic, or it can kind of compound the emotion itself. We're able to drop that and have a sense of curiosity, maybe a sense of curiosity, openness to it. It starts to kind of create some space around it. And hopefully we can start to disidentify with the difficulty and see it as something that's present, but not us. Like, anger is there, but I am not anger. And that can be very, very helpful as a kind of working basis.
What would stop one from not being curious? Sorry, Lou, go ahead. Okay. What would stop someone from not being curious? Not really wanting to know, or just having too much anger or issues over that particular anxiety or thing that's creating the anxiety?
What stops us from being curious? Just, I guess, wanting expectations, just wanting something to be different. Say if I've been living with anxiety for 5 years, maybe I'm growing tired of it, or wanting it to go, which is very understandable because it's very impactful on us, impact our lives significantly. And so it actually, in a way, it kind of makes sense. Like we not want it, we want it to go away. That actually kind of makes sense. It's pretty reasonable, actually. And yet, that not wanting it to be there can kind of create a trap where it makes it stronger, unfortunately. Yeah. And it can be kind of sneaky. We can kind of think maybe we're yeah, it seems like we're doing a good thing, but um or like, oh, or we're just so accustomed to it, so familiar with it. Why would I be curious about it? I've already experienced it enough, like I've watched every episode of Seinfeld 100 times. Whatever. Why would I be curiosity to? Yeah, how can I bring curiosity to it? So there can be a bit of a habituation, that like curiosity is almost counterintuitive in a way. Like, it's almost sounds like a naive state of mind or whatever. Um, yeah. So it's really catching it at the moment of judgment. And so instead of judging it or framing it a certain way, just kind of being just recognizing it, curious. Like curiosity tends to kind of start to lead into a sense of openness. And then we can kind of observe and even bring in a sense of acceptance that it's present, not necessarily accepting it as a positive thing, but just in a neutral way of its presence. And then kindly allow the process to unfold and see what happens. Yeah, Lou.
I went through an episode where, after, about 6 months into doing all this meditation and everything, where ideas would pop into my head and I'd say to myself, that's not me. And I'd push them away. And then after a while, I realized it came out of my mind. So it is me. It's in my mind. So then I changed it around and said, it is me, but it's not who I am now. And then I just let it come up, ignored it. I maybe made a note. Oh, there it is again.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a while, it just stopped. But when I was in that point of pushing it away, it got stronger and stronger. And it was very upsetting because I didn't know what was going on, because I knew it wasn't me. But then I finally realized it came out of my mind. It's me. It's not who I am now. It may not have been who I was my whole life. It could be from a past life. I don't know. But I know that right now it's not me. So just let it happen and let it go.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah.
That's interesting, though. So these are feelings you were having at the moment.
These are things like I would be, they were like non sequiturs. They were like thoughts that just popped up, had nothing to do with whatever I was doing. Some of them were maybe obscenities. Some of them were, I don't know. They just weren't who I always thought I was.
Right.
And so I was convinced that they weren't me. But then I realized, you live a long life. You hear things when you're young, you suppress them, or they just bounce off you. And as you dig deeper into your mind, you're going to uncover all this stuff that you've been stuffing away all this time. And it's going to come out.
Right.
It's just a matter of realizing it's not you as you are now.
All right. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that experience is powerful to, I'm sure, like the seeing that it comes through and then it's fit, like it goes, like, and we don't have to push it away. We don't have to push. There doesn't have to be this kind of effort and suppression or aversion or pushing away. That we actually can live through it, move through it, and it kind of liberates. and that kind of insight and wisdom build, continues to build. So
It was
yeah.
it was just a matter of listening to guided meditations for 6 or 8 months, and every once in a while they go, thoughts are like a cloud. They arise, they abide, and they fall. But those were just words. And finally, someday I realized thoughts do arise, they abide, and they go away. If you think about them, then they stay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what else? Thoughts of particular questions? It really can be kind of wide open, be about any topic.
Okay, I have one. It's nothing to do with what we're talking about. Guru devotion.
Mm.
If you have more than one guru,
Mm-hmm.
because you read a certain book by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, where it talked about if you don't recognize all your gurus, your path gets blocked. So you start thinking about all the people who helped me, and you're making your gurus. So now you have 9 gurus. How do you give them each? How do you give them each what they're due in your mind, like when you're making offerings and in your merit field? Is it enough just to picture them in your merit field, or every time you make an offering, you just go through the whole list, starting with your root guru and then adding all these others? Or
Yeah, interesting question. Yeah, I guess it depends on how your practice is, and there's always extensive and abbreviated approaches to everything. So there's the idea of, with this kind of merit fields, and for those not familiar with it, I'll get there and try to explain. But it can be lots of vast individuals. You probably heard the many into one, this kind of idea of Buddha as a representation of all of our Buddha Dharma Sangha. Yeah.
so maybe your root guru could be a representation of all your other gurus.
Yeah. That openness. Yeah. Yeah, and it can be a touch thing. And sometimes for me, I tend to do the abbreviated, kind of simplified practices often these days. And sometimes I'll reflect on different teachers at different times when they pop up. And I think the openness and respect in a general sense, that it starts to kind of be built, I feel. And the point with gurus in the Buddhist tradition is there's a lot of layers. When we talk about devotion or since gratitude, maybe, or reliance, and devotion really is gratitude. You're devoted in a way. Gratitude is very much a key ingredient in that. It's to kind of open the heart. It's a fast way to open the heart. You have a admiration or respect and kindness towards somebody who's benefited you. It's just kind of beauty of the student-teacher relationship. And we use that power of that human relationship to kind of open our hearts and open our mind to, and again, in the Buddhist tradition, there's this outer and inner quality. So the outer guru, the job or the role or function of an outer guru is for the student to realize the inner guru. So that the wisdom, their own wisdom, or kind of hopefully being an effective mirror and guide for them to discover that in themselves. And ultimately it's that pure nature of mind that is the kind of fundamental guru. And because the relationship can be kind of powerful, like having that sense of inspiration or respect or devotion, like in the practices where you're making offerings and so forth, it's a sense of gratitude, just kind of nourishing that sense of gratitude. So so I guess it depends on what's your cup of tea. If the vast merit field is very inspiring, we're having lots of the individuals and the bodhisattvas and the Buddhas, and awesome, and it's very valuable. And then the all-in-one can be a very powerful message as well. But we also don't want to make it into like a thing where it's like, if I don't take off, if I
if I forget somebody, it's going to be all over. It's the hell realms for me.
Don't do my tithings. It's off I go. Yeah.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Is it okay? Any thoughts on that? Or
no, it's a lot of things to think about.
Yeah.
So along that same thread, I don't know much about all the Buddhism gurus and the statues and all this other stuff. So gurus are real life teachers that have existed in the past, or are they considered a teacher if they're called a guru in the present, or at any time, I guess?
Yeah. So in India, guru is teacher. That's and it's widely used. Guruji is kind of a respectful way to address your teacher, of your history teacher, your music teacher, your spiritual teacher. So Guruji is just a kind of respectful term for teacher. In the Buddhist tradition, there's kind of different contexts or different levels of a student-teacher relationship. So, because in the past, you could say there's almost like an apprenticeship level, if the guru-student relationship, definitely in certain times in the past and contexts in the past, it kind of resembled an apprenticeship where you're really training closely with the teacher, maybe living with the teacher, kind of, many hundreds of years ago, or even maybe in Tibet and India still, from Asian cultures. But so it's kind of your spiritual teacher. And there can be a lot of different functions. So there can be a kind of mentorship. There can be like an instructor where you're going to classes and learning from a teacher of a class. In the Buddhist tradition, there's different times in the path where you can take vows. So you can take refuge vows. It's like if you really identify and feel like kind of central spiritual compass is Buddhist teachings and you want to take refuge in a formal way in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, you can take refuge vows, and you do that with it's called a preceptor. So somebody who's kind of holding the lineage, who's qualified to offer vows in that way. So you'd have like if that person gives you vows, it's kind of a special relationship that's created there, like my refuge preceptor, the refuge from the Lama in Sikkim, and he's kind of my refuge teacher, and I appreciate that and cherish that kind of role that he played. And then there's other sets of vows, and then there's a kind of mentorship, like a spiritual mentorship, where like if you're kind of going along in the path and like you get to a point like, okay, I don't know what practice I should do. I don't know where I'm at, how far along, or where I'm going, kind of thing. And I would like kind of a mentorship and somebody I could talk to about my meditation practice, my spiritual practice, how that's playing out in my life. Get some guidance in that way. And then in the tantric tradition, which Tibetan Buddhism holds the kind of tantric system of practice as well, that there's more of a kind of a tighter container where you're kind of empowered into particular practice, and that has its own kind of vows of conduct to kind of create a positive container, a fruitful container for your practice. And then you have a kind of a particular relationship with your teacher who's offered that, kind of initiate you into that kind of practice. Now, initiation can be kind of a loaded word. But yeah, who kind of brought you into that practice? And then in this tradition, and in different Tibetan lineages, they kind of there's a kind of term of root guru, my kind of root teacher, like my root spiritual mentor. And that's whoever you have this really special, if you have at some point you develop a strong heart connection with somebody who is kind of qualified and can play that role, a healthy role of a spiritual teacher. We can kind of recognize them as a kind of a root source of my journey, resource from a guide. And that tends to happen organically. It's really a heartfelt thing. It's whoever really moves and inspires your heart and really sees like, oh, this stuff is a lived experience, and I feel like I see that in that person, and I want to trust in their guidance and want to study the path and train the path with their support. Yeah, so there's all that, and then there's another layer. Yeah. And then there could be another kind of layer to it with some of the visualization practices. Maybe too complex to say after all that rambling. So I'll stop and ask for any questions. Let's see where we go.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Two questions, actually. I've kind of been holding off. First, you said that initiation is kind of a loaded word. Why is that?
I just sometimes I think of cults, like cults initiate people into stuff.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But not for everybody. Yeah, doesn't have to be.
Okay.
Sometimes people can, feel initiation. What's that mean?
I think you're gonna like go in a cave with hoods on or something and do some weird,
yeah,
weird thing.
Yeah. So far, I haven't seen that in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, but it's kind of, yeah, initiation. The Sanskrit word's abhisheka, or the Tibetan word is more long, kind of, is like to empower, kind of to introduce the teacher's introducing you to the practice and an experiential, through an experiential kind of ritual to help you kind of yeah, be empowered to kind of do the practices. Yeah.
Okay. And number two, taking it back just a little bit, you said something about an inner guru and an outer guru. Could you elaborate on that? On what that means?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. So from the Buddhist point of view, every sentient being, any being with a mind, has this kind of called Buddha nature, Garbha, this kind of womb or potential for awakening, and to kind of awaken into a kind of direct experience of reality. Recognizing that the fundamental quality of our mind and reality is this kind of unobstructed, infinite, blissful, pure awareness. That's buried under our karmic kind of condition, but it can be awakened over time. And because the Buddha was a human, and then had this kind of insight, awakening dawn, and then was called the Buddha. Like he woke up, woke to this reality. And so a teacher or a guru, an external person, functioning in that role, their role is to help the students find and discover that Buddha nature in themselves. So an outer guru is a person who is helping us wake up, and the inner guru is that wisdom that begins to dawn. And you could say, once we start to kind of taste or touch into that kind of potential possibility, or that kind of quality of the mind, that becomes like an inner reference point for us, like an inner teacher or inner guide. Like the wisdom in us, it becomes like a reference that we can use as kind of the ground of our path. And yeah, so the recognition, the wisdom starts to dawn in us, and then the inner guru starts to become stronger. So usually in the beginning of the path, maybe we relying on the outer teacher a lot. That kind of seed starts to waken up, and then the inner guru starts to play a bit more of a role in our lives, and so on, until until we have that kind of full insight or awakening.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
When do you know you've been awakened? You know when you know?
Yeah, they say you'll know. They say you'll know.
Okay.
They also say generally people who say that they're awakened, maybe not a good sign. Because there's a funny saying. Chugam Trungpa had this funny saying, like, you can't attend your own funeral. Like, the awakening is awakening to the selflessness, this kind of no self nature. It's not that we don't exist, but there's the individual, separate, solid ego self is it's like a rainbow, exists like feels solid, but in actuality it's just a mirage. And those who have that direct insight, there's no real I. You say I've awakened, it's kind of like almost like an oxymoron. There's like no, the experience is selfless in nature. Yeah. So yeah, that at least I've heard that's one that people are kind of saying that it can may be a problematic thing because
They're probably trying to sell you something.
Quite possible. Either that or just kind of stuck. And it's very subtle and it's not easy. One depiction, one Buddhist master about 400 years after the Buddha, is named Nagarjuna, and he's kind of credited with kind of popularizing or bringing public or kind of bringing forth these they call emptiness teachings. That was kind of another wave of became a wave of the Mahayana. They almost like a renaissance, you could maybe even say, in a way, like these teachings. It's like they call it the second turning of the Dharma. He's depicted with snakes around his head in the art, and one of the symbolisms there is that misunderstanding of emptiness or thinking we got it when we don't. It's the snake can get you, like it's very like it's a sneaky kind of tricky realization to get. Yeah. Yeah, does that make any sense at all?
Yes, it does. I mean, for them, they'd probably have to go back and I don't know, become more aware of their situation. You know what I mean? They kind of to become fully aware of being.
Yeah, it's tricky. There's a term that a Western Buddhist psychologist, John Wellwood, I want to say he coined it like spiritual bypassing. So with these kind of ultimate teachings, these kind of really like mystical kind of like a sense of oneness or spaciousness or emptiness and so forth. Yeah, it's easy to mistake it, and it's can be a very innocent mistake. But yeah, so it can feel like maybe because you can meditate and create peace, or you can meditate and start maybe have a conceptual understanding that starts to kind of create an experience that feels very free in a way, or build a very strong ego that has this sense of confidence that can feel, that has a confidence as a spiritual package that could be misleading to us. So in that way, a good guru-student relationship is very helpful and supportive in that way of if we are kind of in a place where there's spiritual bypassing or a mistake, we're kind of holding on to an experience in a way, fixating on something, thinking it is freedom, then the teacher might be able to help kind of, pop the bubble and help you kind of see that and be able to keep moving on. And that can be one of the sufferings of just being on your own and not having a teacher and going for it. It's just tricky terrain. And the teacher can be a really good mirror in that way of helping us kind of stay in a genuine space and helping us grow in that way, and catching helping us spot our blind spots.
Oh, it sounds like a very helpful situation. What do these teacher-student relationships? Is it done in a certain way in the Buddhist tradition, or you could arrange it in any way you want, depending on your living situation or where you are in life?
Yeah. So usually how it goes, you get interested in the path and in the Buddhist tradition and start your studies, start meditating. That kind of desire or interest or wish, like for a teacher, will kind of at some point naturally kind of come up for most. And then in classes and circles like this, you're like, oh man, I feel like I want a teacher. How do I do that? Or where can I find a teacher? And then start kind of seeing where that goes. So if there's a center, community, or a teacher that you inspired by, and maybe the teacher doesn't live near you, but maybe they're doing, maybe they're doing Zoom retreats, or hopefully in the not too near future, they're doing in-person retreats. You can go to do a retreat with them. I have a few teachers, and a teacher I'm working with a lot in recent years. Read some of his books, and then he's doing a week-long retreat up in Vajrapani Institute in Northern California, and I went and just immediately it kind of rocked my world, and I was like, I want to study with this person as much as I can. And I wrote him kind of an awkward card, awkward message, and a letter to see if he'd be willing to take me on as a student. And we talked from there and kind of developed a kind of mentor-student relationship. So you can kind of see where it goes, and if there starts to be kind of something that's magnetizing you, a person that inspires you, you feel like there's real communication going on, in a sense, like their words really kind of like, I get, like, I get, or the way they share the Dharma, teach Dharma is helpful for me. Then you can ask and see. Sometimes teacher might feel like it's maybe like, let's kind of meet, maybe not quite yet, so let's maybe come to another class, a couple classes, or whatever. And then kind of go from there. Lou.
I know in my case, I started attending a lot of Zoom classes, and there was this one teacher that just seemed to resonate with me. And I just sent them an email saying, I told them how I felt and that I've been attending, and I would like to be your student. If you would, I would ask them if they would take me on as a student. And they emailed back and said yes. And then for almost a year, I never met them in person. And then one time I finally did meet them. And at that point, We had established quite a relationship through all these Zoom classes. And I asked them if they'd be my root guru. And they said yes. So, it's the only caveat I would say to that is that almost everybody says before you pick a teacher, you need to check it out. You need to check who their students are. You need to check references. You need to look at background, because it's very important that whole relation, it can ruin your whole path if you pick the wrong teacher, or someone who's not qualified, or someone who's out to make a buck. Unfortunately, there are a lot of fake teachers out there. And the last thing is, whoever you teach, you're probably going to end up being like them. So be very careful.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize you could go through more than one teacher in your Buddhist path to enlightenment. I guess
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, the founder of this lineage, this particular lineage, Jason Kappa, he had over 100 teachers. I mean, he was a very profound practitioner, and he studied with teachers from different traditions and was quite an explorer. So he's kind of a extreme example, kind of amazing kind of life. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That tends to seem there can be maybe a root teacher at some point that kind of like clearly show like this, this one really kind of touches my heart. And there's a powerful communication relationship there. And then, yeah, but still have other teachers as well, for sure. I also get, this is just me, but when there's teachers that say you should only study with me, especially in the Buddhist tradition, I don't know if there's real precedent for that in history. I worry about that a little bit. It sometimes can be a red flag as well. I've heard that because every teacher like His Holiness Dalai Lama has many teachers. Have multiple teachers. Lama Zopa Rinpoche has multiple teachers. All of my teachers have multiple, because some teachers play a different role, play a different role at different parts of our path, and yeah. Yeah. And you don't, yeah, maybe Lou, you can comment to this too. Like, we don't, let me say, yeah, it doesn't have to be a thing where we're calling and checking in with them every week kind of thing. Because sometimes our encounters can be like very impactful and be like a year's worth of advice or instruction that we have to kind of put into practice.
I know Venerable Bina said that, she had Lama Yeshe as a teacher, and she could count on, 2 hands how many times she ever asked him a question, So.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not something we have to really feel pressure towards. It tends to kind of be an organic process for everyone. Like, again, we kind of get our feet wet and see where our, if it is something, this kind of path and lineage feels, Buddhist tradition feels like it's like our thing, and then kind of go from there. And So like no peer, yeah, like because you know maybe hearing all these people have oh my teacher, I met with my teacher, and be kind of like a peer pressure culture sometimes that could kind of come up sometimes or feel that impression. But yeah, it's really an organic process that can be very powerful and effective.
Yeah, I got the impression like you were studying with them and you're like living in their house or something. But yeah.
Oh yeah, that happens too. That definitely happens. But you know, some teachers have many students, so you had like 700 people living with
Wow.
you or whatever. You know, it could be, but yeah. I mean, many people. You know, take His Holiness Dalai Lama as teacher. I mean, thousands and thousands of kind of hold in their own regard. Saint Lama Zopa Rinpoche has been asked many thousands of times. He's taught so much and has met so many people and impacted so many people. Yeah. Yeah. And like Lou said it really well. Like there's just a resonance. There's like Amyeshe used to say, like, is communication happening or not? Are we communicating? Is it reaching us? Is it inspiring us? Because everybody, we're all at different dispositions and different presentations and speak to us and support us in different ways. Yeah. Anything burning before we wrap up?
Nope.
Josh, any questions? Luke, yeah. Oh, you're good. Yeah. One of the words for teacher, the Kalyana Mitra, this means a spiritual friend. Another kind of term for a teacher in Buddhist tradition, somebody who plays a role as a spiritual friend or mentor. Cool. All right. Maybe we can finish with the dedication. And the components, how we practice in this tradition. And just acknowledging and recognizing any insights, any little spark of wisdom, kindness, any positive energy we might have created together. Dedicating it that it may ripen, expand, become a cause of happiness and awakening for ourselves, that we can be of greatest benefit and value to as many living beings as possible, enabling them to awaken their causes of happiness and freedom. All right, thanks so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.